Hello and welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. Today on the program we have a band called Wild Rivers. They have a new album that came out September 8th, and definitely recommend checking that out. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. I had a chance to talk to Devon and Ander from Wild Rivers. They were in Colorado as they were starting their tour, which they're really excited about, and headed west out to San Francisco. I think they played the Independent as well. So we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Before we get into that, let me share kind of what's going on in my world. Just a couple small things to update on right now. First off, what happened yesterday? I'll share that. That was really interesting. I was in the living room with my son, and I was working with him on coloring in the lines. He's really started to take an interest in coloring in printable pictures, namely of Zelda and Mario characters and that sort of thing. And he'll take the iPad and kind of compare the colors and do his best to stay in the lines. And up until like a week ago, he didn't have any interest in coloring at all that I'd been able to observe. So really impressed that he's started to take an interest in this direction. And so I was coloring with my son. I mean, I wasn't coloring, he was doing the coloring, let's just be clear here. But he was coloring, and then someone pulls up to my house, which I'm on a property where, people don't come here who aren't supposed to be here. That's just, it's off the main road, and there aren't, a lot of people around who don't belong here. But someone came up and it was like, hello. And I'm like, okay, I'm going. Like I went up out to the door and talked to the guy, but he was pretty frantic. He apparently was a neighbor of mine on the other side of the property, where I haven't. It's you could see those houses, but you can't access it unless you go out of my little neighborhood and then into a subsequent neighborhood, right? And so this guy had driven over here, and he had witnessed that the property was like flooding. It was gushing down the path near my house and flooding the vineyard. And I live on a vineyard property. Here, I'll turn the camera for those that are watching YouTube. You can see that there's a vineyard over there, and it was flooding pretty heavily. And so he thought, wasn't sure if the water was coming from our property or not. So he came over to tell me, well, I don't own the house. So I'm not the guy to talk to, but I know the owner. So I figured I'd give him a call. After I investigated a little bit, I walked down the path to figure out where the flooding was coming from. And it was from the subsequent vineyard on the other property. That's our neighbor. And it was this geyser. It was pretty heavy, actually. And it was large. So I'm, I was surprised to see it. As soon as I saw it, I called the owner and let him know that it was happening, to find out if he had the phone number of the person whose property it was. I'll share a couple of pictures for those that are watching on YouTube. And let me get that. Here we go. Okay, so you can see the geyser here. Here it's gushing, hundreds of gallons a second, I'm sure, so thousands of gallons. I think it had been going probably for a couple of hours by the time the neighbor came over, and then was flooding our property, which wasn't great, right? Because there was nothing we can do. And so the owner called the neighbor. Apparently the issue was, it was a city mine that was messed up, and it was attached to the country club that we live near, which would be an issue if they did not correct it, because they need to make sure they have water for the event that was happening that evening, which was Weezer. Weezer was playing behind my house, walking distance from my house, and so we'll get to that in a little bit. But first the flooding, right? So he said, okay, the city should be coming out, but I guess they hadn't been there yet. I mean, they were taking forever, and it was just gushing and gushing and flooding, and it wasn't coming like near my house to where I was concerned that my house was going to flood or anything. But I was worried for the vineyard, which had been recently planted, as to whether it would be okay. And of course, the drought that we're in, even if we're on a well property and the neighbors on a well property, we don't want to be wasting water like that. Come on, right? So that was what was bothering me. So eventually the city does come out, and does turn the water off, and the issue is solved. But it was interesting, and it took some time. So that's the first piece. Leading up to later in the day, which was Weezer. I talked to my daughter to see if she wanted to go see Weezer. She likes their new single, All My Favorite Songs, and it's starting to get into Weezer a bit, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, a lot of my kids' musical tastes I am not down with, but if they like music, I'm not going to hate on it too much, except for my son, who wanted me to listen to Barbie something or another today, and it's painful. It's painful. Most of his music isn't that bad that he likes, and we had a good talk about why. He's like, well, do you like this song, Daddy? I was like, no. But he's like, do you watch Barbie with me, Daddy? I'm like, no. But yeah, I was like, but I'm okay with you watching it. If this is what you like, sure, go for it. I'm just not into it. Why don't you like it, Daddy? I'm like, because it's garbage. And then my daughter chimes in and is like, that's your opinion. That's not a fact. And I'm like, well, okay, so it's my opinion that it is garbage. and we left it at that pretty much. But I try and get him to watch more productive things. So he did not want to go to Weezer. 4 years ago, Weezer had played behind my house as well as part of the PGA tournament, which is what they were doing last night. And that night was a clusterfuck for many reasons. I think it was actually the next day, if I'm remembering correctly, that the fires in Napa started, and I was worried that I was going to be losing my home. But that night at the show, we were very close, and there was a guy next to us that was either belligerently drunk or was having a seizure, and I couldn't tell the difference. I just couldn't. And he had to have multiple people, hold him down and take him away. Which was really scary for my kids, and they were not excited. So we made it one song into Weezer's set that day. And so my daughter was open to going again, though, and seeing it. And so we were able to walk right through the country club, and go in and watch Weezer. And we actually got pretty close. We got to 3 people back, and it was a really cool performance. I'm gonna share some of the performance on a future pod. I don't know if it'll be next week or what, but for now, I'll share a couple pictures of Rivers Cuomo rocking out with his mullet, which is a questionable taste at this point in the game, but he's got a mullet. And they were rocking out, playing all the hits, theirs and others. They played Enter Sandman by Metallica. They played Africa by Toto, which they famously covered. They played some other, I think, a Tears for Fears song as well. And overall, pretty solid set. I dug it. So we might play a song or two from their set in the coming weeks, wherever we can fit it in. But let me just say that I had a good daddy-daughter night with my daughter. She enjoyed the show. This may be considered her first real concert of sorts. I mean, she's seen other live music, but hasn't been to a ton of concerts. And this one is one that she stuck out and made it until the end. So it's good. Actually, you know what? I take that back. I took her to Frank Turner as well, and she stayed for at least half of that set. There's been a couple, but so she hasn't been to a lot. And those that she has, luckily, I've been able to positively influence her and her music taste tied to those. So was a good set. We met up with my neighbor also and hung out with her for a little bit, and just rocked out to some Weezer. We were, like I said, we were close. People let my daughter get up close, and so we were there for a little while until my daughter wanted to go toward the back, and we just hung out and danced, and it was great. And that was enjoyable, and that's my story about Weezer for now. All right, so we're going to get into Wild Rivers now. Like I said, I had a chance to talk to Devon and Andrew, and Devon and Khalid actually met in college, I believe, and formed this band. Ultimately, we had a really good chat. I enjoyed our conversation together, and we're going to get into it right now.
How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Going good.
Going well, thanks. I'm Devon.
I'm Andrew.
Devon, Andrew, nice to meet you. How are things up in Toronto right now?
We just started our tour last night, so we're in Boulder, Colorado right now.
Yeah.
Okay. How was the first show?
So much fun. Yeah, we'd missed it a lot. It'd been like 2 years since we had a real show, and it was a blast.
What were the last 2 years like for you? Like, what was that experience? How did you guys hold up?
They were hard, honestly. It was weird because when the pandemic started, we didn't get together for we just couldn't get together for months. So it just, I mean, everybody had their own struggles, but we were in the middle of recording an album, and it just put like such a halt on everything. And then we kind of tried to do like the remote collaboration thing for a bit, which was just like wasn't working. So yeah, I think we were just talking about how it's made us just so much more grateful for everything we do now. And we used to get like really nervous and anxious for touring and like not want to do the long drives, but now the morale is just so high because we just have been so starved of all that stuff for a long time, and we're just happy to be there. So
yeah,
it feels good.
And we did end up finishing a record during the pandemic, so that was a huge like silver lining. We kind of came out of it with a finished piece of music.
Yeah, so you have something to show for it after all that, right? So
yeah.
And we'll talk about the album, of course, as well. So the energy at the show was great. Like the dynamic of the band and everything was on point.
It was amazing. We have 2 new members with us playing drums and bass, and it just all clicked together. And I think it was like a lot of the audience's kind of first night back out seeing a shows. It was just like a really, really great vibe.
Yeah. So why did you choose Denver as the kind of start for this tour? Tell me a little about that.
I don't know.
I think there's like logistical things. Like I think it made sense from a driving standpoint. We haven't actually played in Boulder before, but we have like a lot of I think our top listener city on Spotify or whatever is Denver. So I think it kind of made sense to do Denver early on, but not as the first show because it's kind of like a big high pressure one. So we got a couple practice ones before that, and we were actually only supposed to play one show in Boulder, and it sold out, so we got to add another date. So yeah, it's just a great place to start.
That works. And you mentioned Spotify. Spotify is a big kind of part of what helped put you guys on the map, right? I mean, you guys getting added to Spotify playlists and stuff.
Yeah, we got so lucky with Spotify because early on in like 2016, I think it just came to North America in 2015, and we weren't familiar with it. But when we released our first song, Wandering Child, it got on a playlist, and then it kind of like snowballed from there. And I just feel like we got so lucky with the timing of everything, and the algorithm, and it's been really helpful because our first few tours when we were just starting out, we would look at the back-end data of Spotify and identify where the people were and then just like drive to those cities. So it's such a useful tool for everything we do.
Yeah. Now, before we kind of get too deep into the music and everything, I do want to take a moment to say, okay, we're recording this on September 11th. I know you being from Canada, tell me a little bit about the dynamic and kind of your awareness and how things were 20 years ago.
I think it was an extremely memorable day. It was like as much, we consume so much American news, and we're so close as neighbors that like I think it had a real effect on people in Canada too.
Mm-hmm.
we were obviously very young, but I can remember like coming home from school and kind of and seeing it on TV, and yeah, I think it's um, I don't know, it's
one of those things where you remember exactly where you were when you got the news, and it's just so it just ground shaking. Like it's I didn't actually realize today was September 11th, so I'm glad you reminded us.
Yeah, it's it's a somber time. It's a time to kind of remember and look back and and everything. I actually went this morning with my kids and my mom and my sister to this memorial that's in town here in Napa, California. I know you guys are going to be in the area, pretty soon. We went to this memorial that's in town where there's a couple of pillars from the from the towers that are erected here, and they had a little ceremony situation. So it was an opportunity for me personally, at least, to get to introduce that to my kids. I didn't realize how little my daughter knew about it, and you're right. I remember where I was 20 years ago. I mean, waking up to it and watching it on the news. I remember I got a haircut that day. I remember, work, going to work and everything. It was just crazy,
Yeah.
So sorry, I didn't mean to bring everything down, but
no.
It's an important reminder for sure. Toronto is also like pretty close to New York, so there's a lot of Canadians that work in New York, and it definitely feels very, very relevant to Canadians as well. So I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah,
for sure. So let's talk about your musical kind of upbringings. Like, tell me about the music that was on in the house when you guys grew up. What did your parents listen to, and were they musical at all?
Neither of my parents are musical. My dad like loves listening to music and showing me music, and kind of always made a point when I was young to like expose me to a bunch of different music, and he'd always play songs on the car stereo and kind of test me on which artists were playing and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But my first kind of thing was just like boy bands, and like I have a sister a couple years older, so it was a lot of like Spice Girls and Ashanti and stuff like that. But kind of my dad would listen to a lot of like kind of soul music, and he's from England, so a lot of like British rock and The Clash and stuff like that.
Yeah. And how about you, Devon?
So my parents were kind of, I'm definitely grateful for my musical upbringing, because they just played so much music in the house as well. It was a lot of like 60s, 70s singer-songwriter, and then on the other side, like soul, R&B, like Fleetwood Mac to the Jackson 5 to like, I don't know, just a lot of that era, a lot of like singer-songwriters, and I think that's kind of what got me interested in it, because I was just so obsessed with like listening to the lyrics and what people were saying, and it was a great musical upbringing. So I appreciate my parents for that.
Yeah. Andrew, at what point did you pick up the guitar?
I think I was 12 years old or 13 years old. I saw one of my best friends still to this day played like at not a party, but kind of whatever you call a hangout as a 12-year-old. And I saw him play guitar, and I hadn't seen anybody as like a peer play guitar before. And he was just so good, and it kind of like blew my mind, and I picked it up the next like week.
Yeah. Did you teach yourself a lot, or did you take any lessons? Or
I tried taking lessons. I never found like a teacher I really connected with. For some reason, all the teachers were trying to teach me like Metallica, and I just didn't want to learn Metallica. It seems like I don't know what guitar teachers are into, but so I ended up mostly learning off of YouTube.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff there that, that wasn't around when, let's say, I was younger. So, as opportunities. So, okay. And so, Devon, you and Khalid got together, and you were actually Devon and Khalid. Like, tell me about the dynamic of that original band that you guys formed.
Yeah, so Cal and I met in college at a place called Queen's University, which is about 3 hours outside of Toronto, where we lived. We were both in school for things completely separate to music, but both kind of doing it on the side, trying to play open mics and coffee houses and just stay involved in music as much as we could. It wasn't a very musical school, so we were just kind of doing whatever we could to kind of keep our musical interests alive. And I think we were both looking for people to collaborate with. And we had a mutual friend who introduced us at a party when we were maybe in our second year. And the next day we got together and we just tried singing a few covers and it felt really natural. So we were like, okay, let's like keep doing this. So we started kind of doing the college circuit, playing mostly cover shows. And then Cal had written some original songs and he was like, why don't we try these? And I think my parents for Christmas had got me like 3 hours in a recording studio, and neither of us had ever been in a studio before. So it's just like a really exciting new experience. And we only had 3 hours and we recorded 3 songs, which was
That's crazy.
so crazy. And we released it as an EP. Just, we didn't know anything about releasing music, but we were just like, we'll put this on the internet and see what happens. And we had such a supportive community from our college that it ended up doing pretty well, getting a bit of like local radio attention in Toronto. And then it kind of gave us the confidence to realize that we could try pursuing it. So for the next few years, we did the duo thing. And then we realized we wanted to expand and just be able to have a bigger sound and be able to collaborate with more people. And that's when we met Andrew and our original drummer, Ben. And we got together to record our first album, and then we were just like, this feels so good and so right, so let's become a full band, and then transition to Wild Rivers.
Yeah, and so after the time where you had this limited time in the studio, you busted out those 3 songs. Did you tell me, did it feel more comfortable going into the studio with the full band and kind of preparing for your first album?
Yeah, I mean, we're still definitely figuring it out on the fly. We had a great producer for our first album who kind of showed us the ropes and guided us through the whole experience of being in a studio, and just like knowing how to capture sounds. Like it was such a learning curve because we didn't know anything about it. So he was definitely a huge help in that and made the experience so great. We went to a studio called Catherine North, which is about an hour outside of Toronto, and we locked it out for I think 2 weeks straight for our first album, which is still not that much time actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that was kind of our first intro to really doing it. And ever since, like every time we go into the studio, I feel like we're still learning and getting more comfortable and like finding our way around our process. So yeah, we've definitely gotten a lot better at it since then.
Just realizing every album we've taken way longer. This last one took like 1.5 years.
Yeah.
A little extra time there.
Yeah.
And Andrew, what drew you to this band, to becoming a part of it?
I didn't know anything about them until we had our first like rehearsal jam session, and it was just in Ben's parents' basement, and it was just such a great vibe. Like we all, mostly from a just personality perspective, got along really well, and it just kind of felt right. And there was a show kind of lined up like 2 weeks away, opening for this awesome band called Always. And so we did the first show, and it just, I don't know, we never looked back. It's just always felt great.
It's funny because originally we made Andrew play the bass. He's definitely a guitar player, but like is also good at the bass. And eventually he just like pawned it off to me.
You just handed it over.
And then I found myself playing bass, and I don't even play bass.
Yeah.
Now we have a bass player, which is great. But yeah, Andrew, it's funny. It's funny to think that you were originally our bass player, and you're such a guitar player.
Yeah.
Like, I can make this work, but it's not natural.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so that first show that you guys mentioned, I mean, leading up to that first show, you had a bunch of songs for an album, and not even a band name, kind of going in, right? The day before, you're like, okay, we're going to settle on this. We have to have a band name for this first show, right?
Yeah. It was kind of a good pressure on us to figure out a band name, because I think we could have gone for years with trying to figure it out. We had a list and we kept doing combinations of different words and just like, yeah, it was good to have that time pressure.
Yeah, it doesn't always feel natural at first, right? Like, I mean, it's like, okay,
Uh-huh.
this, you have to kind of build into that identity and be
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, you can't imagine it as anything else afterwards.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. And so from that first album, the 88 comes around, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about, the themes of your music. There was a theme with the 88. Tell me a little bit about what you guys identified there.
88. Oh my gosh, this is so bad, but I'm trying to think of the songs on 88 because it's been a long time.
Well, there was, we called it 88 because there was a random.
So it's like
Oh,
time, right? Like a theme of time with it.
Yes. It's interesting because I do think that looking back on our releases and our upcoming album as well, I think we do have kind of an obsession with the concept of time and like wanting to be in a different time. That's something that's kind of I've noticed throughout all the songs that we have released and have coming. But yeah, what Andrew was saying is we rented a studio in Toronto at this building called 88 DuPont. And that's where we had written and demoed out a lot of the songs. And so that's kind of where we got the name from. But it also tied into a lyric in A Week Ago that says, if I could get the Chevy back to 88, I'd travel back in time, which is a Back to the Future reference.
Back to the Future.
So yeah.
I think we all have like a weird nostalgic bent to us. I think we all fortunately had really nice childhoods and stuff like that, and we're always kind of like trying not to get too far from that. So I think 88 was kind of in a weird time in your kind of early mid 20s when everyone's starting to like actually become an adult and like seeing our friends get kind of real jobs and stuff like that. It was, I think at the time we were thinking a lot about like growing up and kind of trying to get back to the good old days, but we're still in the good old days. It's all good.
Of course. And then songs to break up to, like, tell me how that came about. How did you decide to kind of go with that as a theme?
So it's interesting because we didn't actually go into the EP intending on it being a breakup album. We had probably 30 songs we were choosing from, and the ones we ended up picking, we realized after, we were like, oh God, these are all breakup songs. Let's lean into it.
Yeah.
And our producer, Skylar Wilson, for that EP, we were out for like dinner after a recording session and we still didn't have a name for the EP. And he was like, why don't you guys just make it songs to break up to? And we all laughed because we were like, that's funny, it's a joke. And then the more we kind of thought about it, it just grew on us. And we were like, let's just lean into it and own it, because it definitely is a breakup EP.
Yeah, it was funny. It was so late into the recording it that we realized like, wow, every song is about breaking up. And but it kind of worked out that they're all like about different points in a breakup and kind of from different perspectives and stuff like that. And it kind of had an arc to it. So we just, leaned in and went with it.
Was a lot of it from like personal experiences, or, where were you writing from?
A lot of them came from Cal, not to talk about his relationships without him being here, but he had just gotten out of like a very long-term relationship. And I think that kind of fueled a lot of the record. But yeah, you'd have to ask him about that.
Sure. And your way of releasing it, I mean, we're in a challenging time, right? I mean, so you guys got really creative with how you released it. You had a Zoom party, and tell me about that experience.
It was honestly really special. We obviously we wish we could have toured the record and everything like that. That was kind of the hardest part, not seeing the payoff of being with the crowd and performing the songs, but we're kind of getting that now, so it's great. But the silver lining of it was that we were able to, through having the Zoom party and doing things like that, just like really connect with people on a way more personal level, because we're just on Zoom together with like a smaller group of people, actually being able to chat and answer questions. So I think the good part about everybody having to transition to online is that it does allow you to have like a direct conversation with people who are listening, and that's been really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think it was at kind of at a time where it was like peak lockdown in Toronto, and it was still early enough that there hadn't been a ton of like live stream events and stuff like that. So it was kind of nice. It was like the first time we'd had some kind of form of community in a long time. Yeah, so it ended up being really memorable and special.
Yeah, and tell me about the gift baskets that went along with this session. What was included in there?
So we wanted to make a breakup package. Basically, we were like, what do people want when they just got dumped? So we did chocolate bars because you obviously need some indulgence. We did some tissues because you need to wipe your tears somehow. We did little notes for everybody. What else was in there? We had mints in case you want to go get back out there.
Did we have matches for some reason?
We had matches in case you want to like burn their house down.
Did anybody admit to doing that? No.
Yeah, no, off the record.
And was it a requirement that people be going through a breakup to attend this session too?
No, but honestly, the funniest and worst part is that some people message us being like, I listened to your EP and I realized I needed to break up with my partner, so I did it. And I was just like, oh God, that's not what we meant to do. Push people into ending their relationships.
Yeah, I think we were in the earlier albums and stuff like that, we would get the kind of opposite, like, oh, we listened to your music together and kind of built a connection around that, and then this album just broke everyone up.
So a lot of those connections that you guys built, it was those individual ones that you guys you broke up, right? So then you have to go into it and be like, okay, new relationship, or are they getting back together? What's the story here, right? So,
maybe for our next project it should be like, you should get back together.
You want to
songs to make up to.
There you go.
You got a name already, then you just build that, right? So so that takes us to Long Time, right? And there is a little bit of time before Long Time comes out, but already I'm sensing a little bit of a theme with Long Time. You have Weatherman, and then in Long Time, you have a lyric, two kids hanging in the rain, and in the Weatherman video, there's this rain dynamic, coming down, which is pretty cool. So tell me where we're building here, because I haven't heard the whole album.
So the album is called Sidelines and it's coming out on February 4th. And that was like right before the pandemic. We were in the studio in Connecticut, which is where our producer has his studio. And we got there on March 13th and we recorded for 5 days. And then March 17th hit, obviously we had to drive home, press pause. So that's kind of what we've spent the majority of the past 2 years doing. And we're so happy it's finally done. It's called Sidelines because it's kind of, it's an observational record of basically trying to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be, whether that's the past or the future. We noticed a through line of a lot of the songs is kind of nostalgia. We were talking about just like the most nostalgic moments of our childhood, and it was kind of sitting on the sidelines with your friends and like watching a game and hanging out, and a lot of those themes kind of carry through the songs. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think the weather theme, I think being from Canada, we have like very distinct, or at least where we are, like very distinct changes in seasons, and I think it's like kind of built into our fabric to kind of be paying attention to the weather and stuff like that. And we spent a lot of the time writing the record in California, where it's not like that. So I think it kind of made us focus on the weather a little bit.
Yeah. Weatherman is basically about in Canada, in Toronto, a lot of the time the weather forecast is just like completely wrong. It's like really hard to rely on it. And at the time we were writing it, we were just kind of feeling a little bit lost personally, like in a weird stage of life. And it felt like counting on any sort of certainty was like the same as counting on the weatherman who's wrong 80% of the time where we're from. So that's kind of where the inspiration came for that one.
Yeah. Where in California did you record?
We wrote the record, a lot of the record in California. We rented a house in Echo Park in Los Angeles, but then we ended up recording it between Connecticut and Kingston, Ontario, and Toronto, and just kind of all over during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Tell me about kind of that perspective for you guys. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, leading up to the record, we went to Echo Park for like 5 months, and it was awesome. We just like had nothing to do other than write music, and it was kind of the first time we'd really been together in a situation like that, and yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. How do you guys set on a location, especially being, from Canada and coming to the States to kind of build these albums, right? I know the 88 you did in Nashville. Tell me about where you place yourselves to kind of make the albums happen.
I think we've kind of just grown up with like romanticizing some of these music cities, like being from Canada, like LA always just seemed like this glowing thing in the distance, and same with Nashville. Like so many of our favorite records have come out of there. So I don't think there was any huge intention other than these are places we want to kind of explore and see. And we'd been to both of them just on tour before and really liked the kind of couple days we spent there. So I think we're slowly ticking off the list of like major music hubs to record in.
There's also so many talented session players and people to collaborate with in those cities that it's such a cool experience. Because in Toronto, there is a great music scene, but it's pretty spread out. It's not as centralized as it is in like LA or Nashville. So we would be in Nashville recording our Songs Breakup 2 EP, and we'd be like, oh, let's get some like background singers on this. And then we would just call up our friends who like co-wrote on the album, and they would show up to the studio. It's just so collaborative and fun. So I think that spirit really fed into the music as well.
Yeah. And that was a different kind of dynamic for you guys when you started doing that at 88, right? Like, I mean, so did that take you beyond your comfort zone? Were there challenges to that for you guys?
It was just a different experience because we had never recorded in a place other than Toronto prior to that. So it was cool to see the way that different studios work, especially Nashville, where it's a lot more kind of traditional recording. It's like a lot of it's live off the floor, whereas we had done kind of like track by track before. So it was just cool to see how people do things in different places and like see how we could adapt to it and what worked for us, and gave us the opportunity to just explore different recording techniques.
And it was definitely a bit nerve-wracking, especially in Nashville. Like the level of musicianship there is just so amazing by everybody that like the bar was set really high, and I think that kind of pushed us to dig in and go a bit further.
Yeah. And did you hire a producer for the album as well, or do you like to self-produce your albums?
For this last album?
Yeah, and the 88 as well. I'm curious, like your style of how you approach that.
We've kind of done it in a few different ways, but each album has had like a main producer. The one in Nashville 88 was Skylar Wilson, and yeah, he was just fantastic. This latest album is Peter Cadis, and we found him because we loved a lot of music he produced. We went on tour with the Paper Kites a couple years ago, and they had done their album with him and just had awesome things to say, and we got to meet him at a show. And so, yeah, we did a few weeks with him in Connecticut, and then kind of remotely, we ended up doing a lot of self-producing just out of necessity during the pandemic, but he would always kind of remotely be there and be checking in and getting all the files and putting it all together.
Yeah. And when you go into that process, how much do you guys like kind of prepare and go in with, and what do you like look for the producer to kind of help you guys out with?
So I think naturally, just being in a band, you kind of self-produce yourselves all the time in terms of like arranging things and vocal harmonies and parts and things like that. But I think the best part of having a producer is someone to help us make decisions, because a lot of the time, like, we could do things a million different ways and we can prepare a lot of different parts, but it's nice to have an objective person being like, this sounds good, do this, do this, do this. So we're kind of bringing the ideas and throwing things at the wall, and Peter in that circumstance was kind of helping us like steer the ship and curate it to a specific thing and make sure the whole project felt cohesive. So it's nice to have another brain constantly thinking about that kind of higher level stuff, and we can get a little more granular with it.
Yeah, I think in terms of preparation, there's kind of a sweet spot. I think we like really prepare the songs, like just the lyrics and the kind of structure of the songs before, but then leave a lot of room for like trying stuff out with like sounds and sonics and instrumentation and stuff like that. I think in certain instances we've been like too prepared where we're not getting the benefit of exploring the studio. But I think with this last album, we had so much time without touring to just like really try a bunch of stuff, and we're all like at our own houses just messing around with the songs and everything like that. So yeah, it's good to experiment.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the tour. What do you guys have planned? What does it look like for you guys?
So we have 5 weeks in the US. Tonight's night 2 in Boulder. After this, we're kind of making our way west and then coming back around to the East Coast. And we're hitting almost every major city, which is awesome. Yeah, it's so exciting for us because we were meant to do this tour obviously 2 years ago, and we rescheduled it like 3 times, and then we just canceled it because it didn't look like it was going to happen. And I think we're all still kind of shocked that we're actually here and it's actually happening. And a lot of the shows are sold out, and the venues are almost double the size of what our tour was meant to be 2 years ago. So it's kind of just mind blowing for us that we're just out here doing it. So very, very excited for the next few weeks.
Yeah. So here in the Bay Area, you're coming to the Independent. Now I know you played LA at the Forum a couple years back. Did you get to hit San Francisco? Have you played the Bay Area?
We did. We did play San Francisco. Do you remember what the theater was called? Lincoln Hall.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was great. It was a really fun show. We were opening up for the Paper Kites on that tour, so we've never played our own show in San Francisco, so this will be a first for that.
And do you have things you like to do on tour as well? Like, or do you, when you have the tour plan laid out, you're like, okay, we've played San Francisco, but we want to spend a little time. I know you don't get a ton of time. You have to get in sound check and then obviously get on to the next. But do you have things you want to hit along this tour?
I think we kind of do it day by day. We definitely have stuff we like to do. We usually try and find like good restaurants, not chain stuff, like just whatever the local stuff is, and good coffee shops, and go check out record shops and stuff. This one's a really tightly packed tour. It's a lot of shows in not a ton of days. So I don't know how much time, but yeah, we kind of just take it day by day, and on the rides to the next city, we're Googling stuff to do, and in the places we've been before, we kind of have spots we like now. So if you got any recommendations for San Fran, we'll take them.
Yeah. Let's see, near the Independent, I'm trying to think of where you'll be here. It's been a little while since I've been to live shows too, right? I miss them, but I'm glad they're coming back. So the Independence and Divisadero, there's a spot right across the street that has some good barbecue food. So I would recommend that. I don't remember the name of the place offhand, but it's like you cross the street and it's just to the right. So yeah, you're gonna forget that by the time you get there. Right?
Maybe
I'll write it down after
that. We'll see it and we'll be like, that's the one.
We usually keep a little note of stuff that people suggest us, so we'll write that one down for sure.
There's a Popeyes, but you go to the bar.
We got those in Toronto. We don't need that.
I know you don't need that. So, and then what do you listen to while you're driving? Like, I mean, podcasts or music? Who's in charge of,
we usually, whoever's riding shotgun is usually in charge of the music. So it's nice because we all kind of take turns showing each other music. And yesterday on the drive, we were listening to the new Casey Musgraves album. So I feel like that'll be a big one for this tour.
The new Drake album on the way here, and the new Kanye album.
Lots of podcasts. Kind of a big range of things. Like, we have so much time that we burn through content so quickly that we have audiobooks, we got podcasts, we got Netflix downloaded, just lots of time to fill. So
yeah.
We do this thing too. Usually me and Cal, when we're up front, one of us, whoever's in the passenger seat, will be watching a show on Netflix. The audio will be going through the car, and the passenger has to describe what's happening in the scene so the driver knows what's going on. It's a good way to pass hours.
Hey, that's awesome. It's like subtitles a little bit, you know,
Exactly.
with your own interpretation. So
exactly, throw your own little twists in there.
Yeah. So as we go on down, Devon, I want to ask you about one other thing. Tell me about Devon and the Dads.
Devon and the Dads. Wow. Respect for finding that information on the internet. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, that's such a deep cut. I was 18, maybe. Yeah, like 18. And my sister's guitar teacher, who was kind of helping show me the ropes of getting into the music industry a little bit, he was helping me kind of like record my vocals and just familiarize myself with recording. And he had a band, and it was a dad band, and they asked me to play some shows with them. So that was my actual first experience doing a live concert. And
how have you not told me this?
We called ourselves Devon and the Dads because we only played like 2 shows.
Two shows.
It was really fun.
Yeah. Then you just retire. You're like, this is where we're stopping. You know, we're going out on top.
Yeah. Feel while you're ahead.
But you got to the name of the band a lot quicker, I think, for that one, right? So.
That's true. That was an easy one. We should have kept it. We should have taken it.
Gone with it. That would work.
Well, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on wrapping the new album, getting a tour. I mean, these are big things in this time right now, which you take for granted beforehand, but being able to make this stuff happen, you know, I mean, get out there and get on the road is really awesome. And I hope you enjoy your show in San Francisco. I wish I could be there, but I'll have the kids that night, so I can't make it out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it was great to talk to you.
Great chatting with you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you as well. Be safe, okay?
Yeah, you too. That
was the interview with Wild Rivers here on Concert Pipeline, and that takes us to the final segment on the program, the music news. I have a couple of stories to wind up the program today. First up, this is one that caught my eye, and I'm all for bands existing. People can make music and do whatever they want. There could be cover bands, there could be original bands, there can be bands of all different shapes and sizes. This is one I haven't really settled on whether it's something that we need in the world. And maybe there is a following and a fan base for it. And maybe I'm just missing something, and it'll be really great. And it put on a killer live show. Maybe, I don't know. There's a Beatles and Metallica mashup band called Beatallica. They're announcing a new album that's arriving in November. So they're going to release their 4th studio album. I don't know how this has made it that long without me catching it. Maybe I've been aware of this in the past and just blocked it out. But the Devolver album, it's coming out on November 12th, as I said, on Metal Assault Records. They're going to have a video for the album's lead single, Wherever and Everywhere, on October 1st. It's going to arrive via the group's YouTube channel, so you can check it out there. Fans can pre-order the album, and all of the pre-orders come with an instant download of the group's new single. The group said about the new album, Beatallica are stoked to finally be releasing the Devolver album after many years of arranging, rearranging, and deranging concepts. Let's see what they did there. And they are, let's see, they said, our relationship with Metallica has been a blessing, and we thank them for their support and allowances. The Devolver album will have all the elements of past Beatallica recordings, plus more. Listeners will pick up on the mashup between original music and lyrics and Metallica compositions, along with Beatles sensibilities, style, and influence. Thrashy, heavy, clever, subversive, and Hesh, of course. So there are a number of songs. You can check that out when it comes out. Okay, and NME reviewed Metallica's recent tribute album. Okay, yeah, that doesn't matter. That's not part of the story. Anyway, carrying on. While we are talking about Metallica, and we are, I want to hit this story about Metallica. They played their first full concert of 2021 with a surprise club show in San Francisco, which is incredible. I saw this and I mean, before it actually happened, but after it was announced, and I was just like, I wish I had a time machine of some sort to be able to make it to this show. The Metal Veterans played a 16-song set spanning hits across their entire back catalog. But first, let's talk about this concert because this concert is incredible. They played at the Independent in San Francisco, which is a small venue that holds maybe 250 people tops, and you couldn't just buy tickets online or anything like that. No, that would be too easy. They announced the show on Metallica's Twitter, I believe, and said that first come first serve. This was like at 3:05 in the afternoon when they announced it. It's a $20 show. Tickets were $20 cash, and you had to go line up at the Independent. Tickets were gone in under 30 minutes through that method, and so crazy, right? So you had to be near the Divisadero where the Independent is, and just be lucky enough to line up there. I watched some of the videos of the performance, and I was like in awe. I mean, a big Metallica show, no fire, of course, it's indoors and small venue, but none that I saw anyway. But a full Metallica performance, and the sound was like blown out through the recording. I mean, they were playing loud, you could tell, and they were not holding back. So pretty incredible. Metallica put on a good set. I was impressed by what I saw. So like I said, a 16-song set, including Sad But True. And I believe on that one, James Hetfield even played 2 guitars, throughout that song. For Whom the Bell Tolls, Moth Into the Flame, One, Master of Puppets, and Seek and Destroy. And there was a rare outing for Whiplash as well. First time the band has played to a crowd for a full show this year. And so they're going to be playing Louder Than Life Festival in Louisville, Kentucky, but they're also going to be playing at the Chase Center in San Francisco in December. So you can check that out as well. And they just put out their Blacklist album, which includes a bunch of covers. One song where Miley Cyrus and Elton John and Yo-Yo Ma, all collaborated. And it's a really cool cover. We talked about that last week, I believe. Really dig it. All right, that is the Metallica story. Okay, so this story is interesting to me. Josh Homme from Them Crooked Vultures, among other bands, he's struck me as not the best quality dude, just from things I've heard and read over the years. This one is a little bit concerning. His daughter's been granted a temporary restraining order against him. His 2 sons were denied their own restraining orders against their father. So all the kids are trying to get restraining orders against this guy. Why are they doing that? His 15-year-old daughter, Camille, has reportedly been granted a temporary restraining order against a musician. According to TMZ, the Queens of the Stone Age frontman will be required to keep a distance of at least 100 yards between himself and Camille and will not be allowed to make any contact with her. And this was approved by a judge in Santa Monica. It's going to be valid until a formal hearing takes place later in court in September. Comes after it was reported last Thursday that Homme's 2 sons, Wolf, who's 5 years old, and Oren, who's 10 years old, filed through their mother, who's the Distillers front woman, Brody Dale, restraining orders against him in both Los Angeles and Santa Monica courts, which were denied. So, and what's interesting is that Camille had asked for her temporary restraining order to be extended to include Wolf and Oren, but that was denied as well. Her accusations were echoing those of Wolf and Orange, including allegations that he abused them physically and emotionally with flicks to the ear, put downs, threats against their mother and her boyfriend, and groping of the boys' privates. Not good. This is really gross. In response to Camille's restraining order, Homme's attorney said in a statement to TMZ that they believe that Homme's ex-wife Dal had filed for the temporary restraining order as an act of retaliation The attorney said, "We believe that this DV, which was prepared by Brody in her handwriting on the forms, was filed in retaliation for Josh obtaining a TRO against Brody for her physical abuse of Josh, among other things involving the children." So this is ultimately not good. I don't know why the boys' restraining order was not approved. If the girls was, but ultimately not a positive situation. Yeah, there's a lot of battle going on over custody of the kids as well. More to come on that, I'm sure. Okay. So we got one more story before we wind that out with Dave Grohl, and this is related to Dave Grohl in that Taylor Hawkins, the drummer for Foo Fighters, has partnered with Dave Navarro and Chris Chaney to form a new band, NHC, and you can hear their first new tracks online. Jane's Addiction bassist Chaney and Foo Fighters drummer Hawkins previously played together in Alanis Morissette's live band in the 90s. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Actually, that is really interesting. Chaney is also a part of Hawkins' solo band, the Coattail Riders. So they formed NHC with Dave Navarro within the last year, with the drummer who will also serve as a singer in the new band, calling Navarro the best lead guitarist in alternative rock. And they have 2 tracks out, Feed the Cruel and Better Move On. There's a black and white performance video of them performing in the studio. You can check out. They're set to make their live debut at Eddie Vedder's Ohana Festival in Dana Point, California on October 2nd. So new band out there if you want to check out. Taylor Hawkins is a badass on the drums, and he's incredible. So from Taylor Hawkins to the other Foo Fighter that we talk about on every episode of Concert Pipeline, Dave Grohl. He talks about onstage euphoria and COVID-19 anxiety. He says, "You wake up every day and cross your fingers and hope we make it to the stage that day," he told NME. Actually, you know what? This is interesting. This is actually a story from last month. I remember covering this, so I apologize for the rehash of old music news. But we know that he's taking it really carefully. They played a handful of concerts recently, Bottle Rock in Napa as well, and he said they're just playing their first shows, and you could feel it in the audience. You could hear it when they sang along. You could see it when they danced. It's been a town-to-town celebration of the return of live music everywhere we go, opening new venues, reopening venues that had shut down. You could see the people have been starved of live performance, as if we hit the stage like we haven't hit the stage for 2 years. They freaking rocked out at Bottle Rock. And put on an incredible show. And if you want to see any of Dave Grohl's performances from Bottle Rock, you can check out Concert Pipeline's YouTube page. He did the Hanukkah sessions there as well, with his buddy Greg Kirsten, and also you can see him joining Guns N' Roses on Paradise City to close out the second night of Bottle Rock. All right, speaking of closing out, it's time to close out this episode of Concert Pipeline. Thanks again to Wild Rivers for appearing on the program. Next time on the program, we have the Zombies. This is a really fun one. I had a great conversation with the Zombies, Rod Argent, and we talked about what was upcoming live performance that was live streamed. I had a chance to view that as well, and maybe we'll bring some footage from that performance for the program. But we really dug deep a bit, going back, and he shared some really interesting and awesome stories. So we have that coming up, as well as a bunch of other great stuff in the pipeline. So for all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. I'll catch you next time.